Hey friends, Autumn here, founder of Glamlocks and creator of Glamlocks sewn-in hair extensions. At Glamlocks, we've combined some of the most effective hair extension methods to create what I like to call the Glamlocks difference. We're certified in over 13 different hair extension methods. And as far as the sewn-in method goes, to this day, Glamlocks is the longest lasting, least damaging hair extension method you can offer your guests. As motivated as I am to learn at this point in my life, I find it so much more fulfilling to share. And that's what we do at Glamlocks. We teach you how to safely secure and adjust tension. We teach you how to sew and lock stitch correctly, how to completely eliminate hair extension alopecia in one simple step. I'll also teach you how to custom color hair extensions, how to properly charge, and so much more. It's my desire to help you grow in knowledge and confidence to achieve any hair extension method on any type of hair. I want to open up your mind to other techniques without fear, and we do this by using our principle-based approach to all hair extension techniques. Glamlocks may not be able to offer every type of hair extension, but working with us, you will discover some of the best techniques and tips for nearly every type of hair extension on the market. We promise to offer you affordable bonus techniques that will help you become the best hair extension specialist. I look forward to sharing with you. For more information, please log on to glamlocks.com. Before you begin, client consultation is key. I personally like to have my clients send me a front and back photo in good lighting of their hair so I can see if they're a good extension candidate. I like their hair just about shoulder length or longer. Otherwise, it's really hard to blend. The very first thing that you're going to do is section the hair. In this part of the video, we are going to talk about the importance of a cowlick and hair texture. Okay, so before we begin sectioning, you want to go through and take a look at their hair and find, I always like to find where their natural part is, where their cowlicks are, because you want to make sure wherever that cowlick is, you're at least, I'd say almost 3 fingers below the top of that cowlick is where you would, the highest that you would want to take your row. So I'm going to go through, we're going to start with the very first row. You want to take in consideration how much hair they have. The density and the texture of their hair is going to determine how low you go. She has a lot of density in her hair, obviously, so I could probably go a little bit lower and you won't see it. You want to make sure the hairline, there's enough room. So what I'm going to do is the very first section, I like to go in and find their occipital bone. It's right there, and you want to go just below the bone. Now sectioning can take you a little bit. Like, to me, it's probably one of the most important parts, because once you get that track in there, that's it. You don't want to go in and take it out. So I'm going to kind of start here. I'm going to lift up, make sure I'm not too low, and then I'm going to go and see. Now the first row, you're not going to go as high because you'll get excess pulling. You won't be able to go as low here, and we want to cover as much hair here as possible. So you want to see where her ear is, and you want to go about 2 fingers past the ear, and about 2 fingers, maybe 3 fingers above. And what I like to do is kind of do this in half. Her hair is really clean, so we got to dirty it up a little, and I like to take hairspray. Just a little bit like that kind of helps keep the grip a little bit easier. So now I'm going to go around and just kind of follow this around, and I'll just like do this just to see where I'm at. I like to be very finicky about the sectioning. Once you have it, then you can just keep moving. Okay, so I went ahead and created my first section where we're going to start our very first track. And what I love to do, especially her hair is really slippery and clean, so I like to just kind of take my comb, all those little flyaways, get them out of the way so you have a nice clean line. And then I go through and take my little clips that I'm going to use to secure her hair. And I just like to keep them right above before I start anything. You really just want to make sure there's the least amount of flyaways as possible. Sometimes I'll even use like a molding putty just to kind of keep it all down. In this next section, we're going to talk about preparing the track. We're going to talk about tension control and bead placement. I like to use a lighter thread underneath for the track, so when I'm sewing in the hair, I could really see the contrast and I can get underneath the track. So I always choose a little bit of a lighter thread on the bottom. I like to just take the end of the thread like that. It just makes it so much easier. Little trick my grandma taught me. And then just pull it all the way. Just take this, wrap it around. There we go. That one's. And then you got your knot. And so we're going to start the first bead. And then we're going to do a stopping point and then a restart point. And the reason being is what we found in the past is if you just start and do a continuous track all the way around, first of all, it's too much weight on the beads in the front and too much weight that it's gonna cause these front beads to slip a lot quicker. And you always want to explain to them too that it's gonna feel snug, it's gonna be tight, but it shouldn't be so tight that their head is throbbing. That front bead is gonna have the most tension on it, so you wanna let them know that they'll get a little bit of pulling on that front bead. Sometimes it feels worse than it looks. You don't wanna grab too much hair because the bead won't fit, but if you don't grab enough hair, the bead will slip. But that is also why we have the silicone beads. Okay, so I got my pliers, I got my needle. So I'm just gonna take this thread, I'm just going underneath, and I'm gonna take the needle and just hook it through the thread like this and pull it. So now this looks good to me. If for some reason you feel there's too much hair and the bead won't get through, I either take the needle or the tip of my rat tail comb and just kind of pull out a couple of hairs if I need to. Bead, slip it through. Now, I like to kind of clip the bead, or the thread up there just to get it out of the way for this first bead. And then I take my fingers and just kind of pull it through like that. Grab my pliers, boom, just like that. That's her first bead. Now I kind of like to go about 2 fingers wide. I'm going to come in, kind of keep those little hairs out of the way. So again, you're going to go, here's the hair in my left hand. The thread is in my right. It's going to go under, bring it under, and then just slip it through. nice and taut. Now you want to make sure that thread is right on base. It will move a little bit, but if it's moving a little to the left, the bead will slip and that will cause it to collapse. The track is really important because this is what we're going to sew the hair onto. So again, I'm sticking the bead, pull it through. How's that feel?
Good.
Good? Perfect. And then sometimes if it feels a little slippery, I'll just go in, little spray. Under, pull. Boom. Grab a bead. I'm able just to slip this through just like that with my hands. Comes right through, boom. Does that feel too tight?
No.
Okay. This is my last bead and I'm gonna restart a bead right next to it. I wanna make sure that there's room for me to go in front of the bead to tie it off. Not to secure it, but just so it doesn't flap. This way. Like that. And then I'm going to secure it by taking the needle behind it. Now this is just locking it, okay? I'm not going to secure it back. I'm going to do that this way. But in order to lock it, that way I know it's not going to come undone, I'm going to take the needle underneath and you're just going to twirl it around twice. I'm going to pull it with this hand to secure it so it lays back. And that's secure. Okay, so I just want to show you where I'm going to start on this opposite side. So I stopped here, tied it off, and now I'm going to restart up on this side. And what I'm going to do is look, you want to take a look at their hairline and you always want to go 2 fingers. You don't want to go any more than 2 fingers in front of the ear. So I'm going to do this, I'm going to move it up, and that lets me know that I could probably start about right here and still be protected from her hairline. And we'll be able to fill in all of this, okay? So we're gonna do this just the way we did the opposite side. Get a good amount of hair. You'll know if you have too much hair because you won't be able to get the bead through. That's always a good measure, okay. I'm going to pull it through again. And when I'm pulling, I'm just lightly pulling. There we go. Okay, I do want this front bead here a little bit looser because when I go sew the weft in, I want to have room so I could hide the weft. Does that feel okay?
That one's pulling a little.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Can you do it a little more?
So it was pulling a little. I think I had too much hair. Let's try this again. How's that?
Better.
Okay, so before I'm even gonna secure the bead, I'm gonna ask her how it feels. Okay, so we're going in the opposite direction this way, but you see how the bead's laying flatter? So you got your section, you got your thread in your right hand and your needle in your left, and the hair is underneath. And I'm gonna come through under and just slip that in so it creates a knot. See this little guy, all you have to do is go in there with your needle, loosen it up. I pulled it nice and taut, but it's not so taut that it's hurting her. So this part, going the opposite direction, it can seem a little bit confusing, but once you get the hang of it, it lays so much better, and we're gonna be able to cover that bead. Okay, so here we go. How's that feel?
Good.
Okay, so I'm gonna keep going, keep doing this until I meet in the middle. Goes under. Just like that. Grab your bead. Pull taut. And I'm kind of pulling the way that I am creating the row, left to right. So I'm pulling it to the right, especially too so I know how the bead's gonna lay and if it's gonna be too tight. Okay, so one more time. We're working left to right. I got the hair in my right hand, the thread and needle in my left. And I'm going under the hair, but holding the thread with these two. I'm going to take the needle and go under and over, just like that. Okay, so I left a little more room so I can take this back this way. Go under. But now before I double knot it, I'm just going to do one knot just so I can make sure it's laying back good. Secure it. Okay, the importance. We started on her left side to create the row. We stopped in the middle. Then we went back to her right side, started at the top, worked our way back to the middle. So now we have a separation here. So when I sew in the hair, I'm not going to have as much weight pulling on her two front beads. Okay? So now we're going to go ahead and start the sewing part. In this section, we're going to talk about sewing the hair. I'm going to tell you how many stitches I do in between each bead and tension control. This color that I chose for her is color number 60, which is the lightest color that they have. And I went ahead and rooted it so it will match. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of hold this as I go. You always want to start on the side that you're going to sew on, is where you want to start clipping the hair first. So I want to start sewing on her right side. You can always cut this flap if it's too much hanging over the bead, but I like to have a little extra to work with. That way when I sew it, I'm gonna go through the weft and kind of lay it down flat so it hides the bead. Okay, so I'm going to take these little guys, and you really want to clip this hair in there so it's nice and secure. Probably, I'm not going to put more than 2 wefts on this row, which is awesome, as opposed to 6 to 8 wefts that other techniques require. So you're just going to lay that right over. You just want to make sure all these little hairs like this, that you got all those out of the way. See this? I'm going to pull that up a little. Okay, so I'm getting to the end here. I'm going to cut this weft off probably about right here. If you were using multiple colors, you would layer however you want to layer. You could do a darker one underneath, a lighter one on top, whatever colors you got going on. I went ahead and rooted it. It was all blonde, but I go ahead and root it before I color so it matches her roots. But this will all blend in once it's all sewn in. Okay, so now that I have my track there, you want to make sure you tell them not to touch it, because it needs to. Okay, now we have the hair prepared, we have the base done, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to sew the hair onto the base. What I've done is I pre-prepare my needles. It usually takes me about 4, I like to have about 4 needles prepared, threaded, ready to go per row, okay? I like to have everything ready so I could just grab the prepared needle and thread and continue on. The worst thing when you're doing this is to have to stop, worst thing for the client too, and rethread the needles. You want everything to go seamlessly. So this is about as long as I have this needle, which is like arm's length, okay? I got my double threaded needle. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to sew this on. I'm going to teach you how I go in and sew this in order to create it to lay flat and cover that first bead. Before you begin sewing the hair, you're going to take your needle and you're going to go underneath that first bead, pull it. And I have the end of my needle and thread in my left hand, and I'm just going to pull it through just like this. And I'm holding it just to ensure that I know where the end of that thread is, because I don't want that to hang out. So I kind of pull that down a little. Okay, now we're going to go through, and I'm holding the thread in my left hand and I got my needle in my right hand. I'm starting on her right side. I like to sew from right to left because I'm right-handed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of, now if this bothers you and you don't like this flapping like this, you can kind of just adjust that. Okay, so now I'm going to go through, I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to go underneath the weft of the hair, and I'm looking down to see, to make sure and then I'm going straight through. Okay, so I got my needle in, pulling up, pull it up just like this. Now it's secure, but it's not knotted, okay? So I haven't locked it yet. So I'm gonna go back in, and you wanna make sure that your needle is underneath the base of the track. I'm pulling, and it's pretty tight right here because I have the support bead. And the reason why today I'm using dark thread is so you can see. Of course, I would be using the white thread if I wasn't teaching today, okay? So I'm gonna go in now and I'm gonna create a lock stitch to show you. So I'm looking down and I'm going just behind that second support bead, and I'm pulling up. Except I didn't lock it. Okay, let's go back in. Okay, this is how I'm gonna lock stitch it. I'm gonna wrap it around once. And what that does is lock it in place. I'm gonna take this out of my way and clip it down there to keep that. So now what I'm gonna do, I got this locked, ready to go. I have 3 rows. Now I'm gonna go through, and this is why I like to use the flat wefts, because I can take my needle and thread and I can go directly through the weft. And then I'm gonna go behind, I'm gonna go in front of this bead to secure it so we don't see that front bead. So I'm gonna push. Now you can do this too with hand-tied hair. It's just a little bit trickier. This is a little bit easier and a little more support. But this can be done too with hand-tied hair. So I'm kind of pulling that, so I've got this loop, right? Now, you don't want any tension when you do this, because this is not to secure it. This is simply to cover that front bead. So I'm taking the needle and it's lying flat to her scalp, and I'm just going behind that little area there. And now I'm going to drop the needle through. And I want to pull that thread. I don't want to use the needle to pull it because I don't want to cause too much tension. There. So I'm kind of using my hands to pull the rest of this thread through. Then I'm going to pull it with my left hand, and that just kind of secures that over that bead. And then I'm going to come over and I'm going to create my next stitch in front of there, but I'm not going to lock it yet. I'm going to pull straight up, just like that. Now I'm going to go right next to it, and this next time I am going to do a lock stitch. Now you want to make sure that you get that needle behind that base of the track, okay? I'm going to take the thread, I'm wrapping it around once, and then pulling it through. And what that does is it automatically locks it at the top. You want to make sure that the top of the thread is going all the way along the top. This is the easiest way to do this. So now let's do this again. And you want to constantly make sure there's light tension there. So now I'm going under the base. The needle is in front of the thread, and I'm just pulling straight up. Boom, just like that, and it automatically directs me to the top of the weft. I'm going to do it again. I'm not locking it yet. I usually go about 4 stitches until I have to lock it again. So I'm using my left hand as a guide with the thread, and my right hand, the needle's in my right hand. Now I'm going to go through, and I'm going to do this until I feel like I'm running out of room with this needle and thread. So I'm kind of, I sometimes have to look. You always want to make sure that you have that needle and thread underneath that track. Now, I see there's a bead right there. I don't want to get too close to that bead tying my my needle and thread, because that could cause breakage. So I'm going to go directly, I see that bead's right there. I'm going to go right to the left of the bead. Pull it up just like that, and this next one, I'm going to go ahead and lock it. Wrap it around once, pull it up, and it's locked in place, secure. I just push it, and I'm using this to guide it, this left hand, making sure that I am in between the beads, making sure there's no other hairs in the way. You could use these clips to clip all those little hairs out of the way. I still have plenty of needle and thread left, so I'm going to keep going. And you can feel it getting secure as you go. I'm going to go ahead and lock it again. And I like to kind of pull it. So I'm using my left hand to make sure that it's locked. If you want to double check, you can open your thread too and just kind of do that. Okay, now I can see that I am getting close to that middle back section. I just want to make sure it's nice and secure. And because I have 3 beads back to back, I want to make sure I get in between all of them to really support it. But I don't want to get too close to that bead that it would cause any type of breakage. So I'm through that middle section, and I think I'm going to adjust this hair. Okay, I'm going to do one more, and I'm going to lock stitch. See, I'm making sure. Now I'm going to lock it. And I'm just going to go ahead and drop that and grab my next needle and thread to continue on this journey. Now you want to make sure that you're constantly have the hair nice and taut. I'm going to grab my next needle and thread. I'm going to go right next to it. People ask all the time, are you poking her scalp? And believe it or not, because the needle is curved, you're really not. You're going in, and they will tell you, but so far I haven't done that. So I'm going right next to my last needle and thread. I got the end. I'm gonna pull it through, slip it through. Okay, so it's not secure. I haven't secured it yet. Now I'm gonna go through, and this is actually my first stitch. Just like that, and now I'm gonna go, my next stitch, I'll lock it. And then I'll continue on the journey. And you just wanna make sure you get all those little hairs. Okay, now it's locked. And I can continue on, go directly behind the thread. So the needle is always going in front of the thread. And my left hand is guiding me to make sure that the top of the thread is at the top of the weft of hair. There's a bead, so I'm going right next to the bead. Okay, I'm looking, and you want to constantly make sure that the needle is underneath the track. This is very important that you see a consistent line of the thread on the top of the track. That is what is going to secure this and make it last the longest. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to knot it. So when you're knotting your thread, that's when you're locking it into place. When you wrap the thread around the needle, once it's securing it in a locking method. And it's really cool because you can feel it as you go. You can feel it get more snug. Feel it get tighter as you go. And I'm constantly using my left hand to hold it up. Now, if I was going to have to stitch in the opposite direction, my needle is still going to be in my right hand, but I'm just going to switch the guiding hand to the opposite way and go. I'll show you. So I'm switching. And then this is, so you're always going to have your needle in your right hand, and your left hand is going to be your guide. So if I'm guiding this way, I'm going this way. If I switch it this way, then I'm sewing that way. So the only thing you're moving is your left hand in the direction of the thread. Now I'm going to continue on. And you want to make sure your client is low enough so you can see what's going on. Pull straight up. We go ahead and lock this. I think I have enough needle and thread to get through, but sometimes if I think for a second that I'm not going to have enough, I'll just stop and get a fresh needle and thread and finish off. In fact, we're going to do that right now just in case. So I'm just going to knot this off. Drop the needle. I'm going to grab another one just to ensure that we have enough. So I'm going to start again right next to it. And go in and do my first stitch. Boom. Now I'm going to lock this next one. I'm going to lock it. Just wrap it around. So I'm almost there. And I have plenty of needle and thread. I always like to do a few more stitches in the front towards the hairline just to really hold it in place. I feel the more stitching, the more secure the weft is to the base. And then it lasts longer. I can get about 10 to 12 weeks depending on the client and how much it doesn't bother them if it's a little loose. Okay, and do one more. I'm gonna lock this one. Okay, now I'm going to go through this. Actually, I could do one more here. Get those out of the way. Now I'm going to go through this weft. There's two of them. Pull that puppy through. Kind of hold it so it doesn't pull their hair. Now I'm going to go in front of that first bead, taking the needle very loosely. Use your hands to keep those little hairs out of the way. Okay, now I'm just gonna pull this, but not all the way until I get the needle through. Now it's okay if I pull this all the way because I have the needle and thread through that loop. Boom. Now I'm going to go back over here and do a back stitch. And then I'm going to lock it. How's that feel, okay? So see, this is kind of loose there. I'm going to go ahead and trim the corner of this off. Okay, so I have the weft, everything is good. You won't see this because when you do it, the thread is going to match the color of the weft. I'm going to take my little scissors and I just kind of cut that corner off a little bit, as much as you need so they don't feel the edge. This is why I like using the flat wefts, because I can go in and cut. When you use hand-tied hair, it's fine. You can go ahead and fold the hand-tied hair and secure it just as well, and it looks just as good. This is just easier for me. So now I'm going to go and make sure that all these little needle and thread points, I'm going to extra knot it one more time, and I'm just going to cut as close as I can without cutting the knot. And this is just security. I'm just doing a simple knot to ensure that it's tight. Take my little scissors, and you can get these little, you want to make sure it's nice and clean for the client. Now I'm going to go to where all my needles are, and I'm just going to make sure that I have it all nice and secure. Let's do a simple knot. You could do 2 if you want. There's no super glue needed. Just scissors, needle, and thread. And take your little scissors, you can kind of clean that up. That was it. Wow, that was all the... Now, see this corner right here? I'm going to go in with my scissors, and I'm just going to cut that corner off. Just to ensure that everything is laying the flattest to her head. So there's no bulking, everything is nice and flat. You want to kind of check, make sure all that is good. Always double check your work. I'm going to lift the hair up and make sure that all your stitching is underneath. And if for some reason you missed a stitch, you could just take your needle and thread and go back wherever you missed it and re-stitch. But there is her first row. Just like that. Start where her hair is, and I'm just going to kind of slide cut a little down. Not too much, just a little bit. See where her hair. see how it just kind of blends her hair. And I just kind of go around the back first just to see. And I always like to kind of cut the bottom last. Go in and do the interior and then we can work on the perimeter. Less is more. You don't want to cut too much. They can always come back. Now I'm going to go around and do the perimeter. I'm going to kind of point cut down here. Do it freehand. Kind of create my line. You want a point cut to blend it in, otherwise you never want a blunt cut extension here. It won't work. All right, now let's curl it and we'll do the final product. This is the tool that I love to use to remove with, because all you have to do is take this little tool, go inside the bead, just like so, squeeze, and it loosens the bead. So this is what I do. I go in, squeeze, loosen the bead. Go in. There's no smashing of the bead. Go in, loosen the bead. Do that all the way around. Go in, loosen the bead. And then we're just going to take the scissors, go in between. Pull the bead off. Then you could just go in and break it up. Don't worry about this. This is just from the bead. Once we go in and wash her, all that will be gone. So if you see that, don't freak out. It's totally fine. It's just because it's been wrapped up in the bead. So I just go through and take the weft out. And what I like to do is every time I move it up, I like to go in before I re-put the weft back in, and I like to remove all of the old thread. Just gonna go in. Remove it. Boom, just like that. This is just where their old hair that they normally lose sits in between the beads. I just like to break that up, pull it apart. Now, if you don't have time and they're just coming in for a quick move up, you can have them come with clean hair. You can remove the weft and then go in just with a flat iron and just run it over that real quick, and that'll just straighten that kink right out, and then you can start over and move up. When you're redoing the tracks, you don't ever want to go back on the same exact. You want to try to pick up different hair. Okay, now I'm going to take her back and wash her and move up the track. Okay.
You might not want to watch me then.
Bead.
Okay, this. Okay.
Yeah, pull.
Alright.
Go all the way over.
I go over here, and I go like this up, and I go through here. Yeah.
And then this one's going to go the opposite direction,
Underneath it, and come back up like this.
Yeah, but you're gonna create a knot.
creating a crisscross effect.
That way,
Pull it.
if you create the knot, then you won't be able to slide to make it secure.
Say this
No, just push straight.
Use the clip so it's secure.
Once you got it here, then you want to just push it on straight.
Pull.
Then you're able to slide it.
Yeah.
And then you can just manipulate it and slide it like that. So that's nice
Pull it tight.
and secure.